Is life happening to me or is life happening for me?
One of the easiest ways to start thinking about an identity that's going to serve you is to look at people that you truly admire.
We're either focused on what we don't want or we're focused on what we do want. Instead of saying, well,
make the commitment to be unstoppable. You can go through the hardest things. It's about that spiritual strength training. I'm going to share something really profound that I've realized this last year. So what I realized is that
welcome to Coaching by the Beach, where we help you materialize the vision you have for your business, your life, your family, and the world. I'm Trevor McGregor, Master Coach.
And I'm Leesa McGregor, international best-selling author, speaker, and entrepreneur. Together, we've built an 8-figure empire, and we've broken free from the ordinary to lead lives of extraordinary freedom, impact, and fulfillment. And now we're here to guide you to do the same.
If you've been searching for more success, more wealth, and more freedom, tune in and let's embark on this journey together. Welcome back to another episode of Coaching by the Beach. I'm Coach Trevor McGregor here with my beautiful wife, Leesa. Leesa, how are you?
I am amazing. Thank you so much for the beautiful intro.
Yes, and we're so excited for today's episode because today's episode is where we talk about your identity. It's really all about who are you? Why are you here? What do you want? Why do you want it? And how can you really create an identity that believes they can have it, right? Because in a previous episode, we talked about the 5 freedom framework, that belief that Leesa and I are here to help you create more financial freedom, more time freedom, more location freedom, more impact freedom, and yes, more relationship freedom. But if your identity isn't consistent with moving towards that, you're going to find ways to sabotage.
This is so interesting because I've just had my own insights around identity this year. You know, what I realize is that as a high achiever, we can spend so much of our lives trying to set goals, achieve goals. You know, we want to be a better person. And sometimes that's coming from a place where we're fueling ourselves based on what we think we're not, right? We're not good enough. We're not smart enough. We talked about that in our previous episode. And that particular way of thinking about getting to where you want to go or being the person you want to be isn't necessarily healthy. What I've realized is that you've got to come from a place of being it. And this is something that I've been playing with a fair bit in my own life recently. You know, when it comes to running a business, having a marriage, and raising a family, I mean, it is no joke. Like this is probably one of the most challenging life experiences you can sign up for, possibly. And what I realize is that, you know, whenever I'm feeling challenged by something, I really have to ask myself, like, who am I being? Like, how am I showing up in this experience? How am I showing up in this example? And this situation keeps playing out. Why does it keep happening? And a lot of times we can step into what I call the victim, right? This is happening to me again. Why is this happening to me? And the victim is very easy. It's very easy to step into the victim because at a societal level, we're taught that, you know, to blame someone else, something outside of us is to blame for how we're feeling or, you know, why something didn't work out. And so we can very easily step into that role of being the victim. But here's the thing, this is what I've realized, is that if you are staying in that place and that energy of being the victim, if you're feeling sorry for yourself and that's it, and then you continue to reinforce that identity that you're a victim. And I say this with all love and respect because the reality is sometimes we go through really hard things in life and we've got to give that time and space. We've got to give that phase of life or that experience time and space to heal and to grow. But there's also a time where we have to let go of that identity. And we've got to step into a new identity. We've got to step into a new version of ourselves. And for myself as a woman, I've been challenged over the years. I've had a lot of success. And I've also had failures. And the times when I've had failures, when I look back, I realize that I made myself wrong instead of realizing that that was just a life experience. And I actually spent way too much time suffering in it. And now I look back and I go, oh my gosh, like the opportunity cost of spending too much time in that victim, in that feeling sorry for yourself. You're losing your life. You're losing years on your life. And so this identity piece is really big. And so I know, I mean, Trevor, you're the master of identity. Let's talk a little bit more about what you've done with your clients to help shift their identity so that they can create that life, so they can create that extraordinary level of freedom. They can create that wealth, that success, those things that they're really after. What is it? What's the secret?
Well, the secret is really multifaceted because, again, we always ask, is life happening to me or is life happening for me? And I think it's a great question, and we often don't like what's happening to us when we're in it. I mean, for a lot of the listeners out there, perhaps you're going through a tough time in your job. For some of you out there, perhaps you're going through a tough time in your marriage. For some of you, you might be having some health challenges, right? Here we are with the world having sped up so fast. We've got so much coming at us. Oftentimes, we're the last ones to take care of ourselves. But again, you're either looking at it through the lens of what we call your lower self in terms of why you're that victim, or we've got to start getting you on the path to becoming your higher self. And your higher self is really your best self, your future self, the self that knows that this too shall pass. But again, I think that you're spot on when you say that most people would rather sit in that feeling of misery because it's familiar to them, right? So that sadness, that anger, that frustration, that feeling of being pissed off, or he did this to me, or she did this to me, and we look to blame and shame and justify. I mean, that's really where society is living these days versus of getting curious and saying, perhaps why is this happening to me? Or why is this happening for me? Or what's the universal lesson in this? Or could this be, something that's challenging me to springboard me to a whole new level? And again, it doesn't matter if it's in your career, your finances, your health, your relationships, your fulfillment. I mean, all of the things that we've been on our journey. And I'm telling you, it's no question, it's a bunch of peaks and it's valleys, and it's peaks and it's valleys. But you and I have come to realize that there's a reason for every season. And sometimes it can feel like winter where you're never going to survive. And then sometimes winter passes and it's spring and you start having a little bit more fun. You start to feel a little bit healthier. You start to, get a check in the mail that you weren't, believing you were going to get. And now your finances get a little bit of a smiley face. So at the end of the day, you got to realize that this is called life and that life is full of polarity, right? A reason for every season. But you really want to ask yourself, how can I spend less time in the identity of being my lower self and step on the shoulders of other people like you or like me or some of the people that we've coached all over the planet to realize that there's another level to get to where your future self and your best self and your highest self sees what's possible as well.
That actually brings up a really good point. Like when you really think about your identity, one of the easiest ways to start thinking about an identity that's going to serve you is to look at people that you truly admire. Who is it that you admire in the world? I have to say, and I know this sounds funny to say, but truly, I admire my husband. I mean, he's a master. He is a master coach. He has discovered his greatness. He has impacted the lives of so many people. It's just like, it brings tears to my eyes. And what I realize is that I want to be more like him. He's reached a level of mastery, and to me, that's really inspiring. And so that level of mastery, what that looks like to me is discipline. It looks like discipline. It looks like focus. It's confidence. It's conviction. There's so many beautiful qualities that you have, and I'm very lucky that I get to see that every day of my life. And so I aspire to have more of that myself. I come from a place where I'm more of a creative visionary, and so I can get distracted easily. I can go off on a different tangent sometimes, and Trevor brings me right back in, and so I look at that. And then I look at the identity of women. What does it look like to be a successful woman? And for me, the success is having a meaningful career that fulfills you, that makes you feel that you're doing the work that you're meant to do in this lifetime, that you're living your calling, and you also have a beautiful family life. It's balancing those desires, that desire to have a successful business, to make an impact in the world, and also to be a wonderful mother, to be a wonderful wife. I can have all the success in the world, but if I'm not a great wife and if I'm not a great mom, it's not really going to mean anything to me. And so I'm really challenging myself to up-level my identity. And I will tell you, it's not been an easy journey. And I know so many of you as listeners can probably relate to what I'm saying. It's been a challenge. It's been a challenge to run a business and to raise a child and to, look after my husband and take care of him and support him in his business. And, it's not an easy journey. But what I will say is that the more I start to think about that identity piece, that woman that I want to be, I start to get clearer about what I need to do to show up every day to be that person. So I hope that helps. And I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about that.
Well, thank you for the compliment. And again, it's been a series of ups and downs, but there's a great quote from Think and Grow Rich where Napoleon Hill says that adversity brings with it the seed of opportunity. And I just love that. I'll say it again, that adversity brings with it the seed of opportunity. That means that when we are victims or we're challenged, that the universe is either giving us a life lesson, a money lesson, a health lesson, a parenting lesson. And it's not for the faint of heart because we're going to get a lot of lessons in our time here on earth. But the great thing that comes from that is a seed is planted that the universe is trying to give you something to really help you to grow, right? And that's where when you talk about, thinking about other people, we call it in the business of coaching character trait integration. And don't let that term scare you, character trait integration. But it's really when you look around you, who do you admire? Who do you go, wow, they've had a rough journey, but they've figured it out. Maybe it's somebody like Elon Musk or Richard Branson or Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey. Maybe it's your grandparents. Maybe it's an uncle or an aunt, a neighbor. Maybe it's somebody in Hollywood, right? For me, I'll often think of Elton John. I mean, we just recently saw Elton John in concert, and I think about where he was when he got started and what he's had to go through and endure to get to where he is today. And it's not for the faint of heart. So when you think about yourself now, it's easy to, think about where you are in your lower self, but also start to see how you could adopt some character trait integration to become more like the people that you admire. And I think that that's what you've done, that's what I've done, and that's what we've helped our clients do. In fact, I'll share a great story about one of my clients who was a real estate investor. He's an amazing guy to this day. He's one of my good friends. But when I started coaching him almost a decade ago, he went out and he bought one apartment building, but he actually bought it in an area that he shouldn't have bought in. And to make a very long story short, that client of mine literally went upside down in net worth by over $1 million. And in that moment, he could have chose to be a victim because he ended up buying an apartment building in an area that flooded quite often. He bought in a floodplain and he didn't know it. And he wasn't experienced or further enough down the road to realize it. And so he tried everything to mitigate it, right? But at the end of the day, he ended up having to sell it at a loss. But he also had the opportunity to, figure out how he was going to pay his investors back. And it's not easy to pay people back $1 million, when you're upside down $1 million. But he stepped out of his lower self of being a victim and into his higher self of asking, for help, which he came to me for. But we started to figure out a roadmap, a recipe, and a blueprint for him to do that. And I'm grateful to say that, in just a very short matter of time, not only did he, clean up that little bit of a mess and that hiccup he was in, but fast forward to today, where this client now has over $2.7 billion in assets under management. And I'm here to tell you, he wouldn't have got there by staying a victim. He had to step into being a victor on his way to victory. And again, lots of people get money lessons. I've certainly had my fair share. You've had your fair share, and together we've had our fair share. But it doesn't define us. What defines us is getting out of our, muddy water and over here into the clean water and, swimming towards what it is that we want to achieve.
I love that. I love that so much. And I think you're getting the gist of the show and how we share things. I mean, I'm very open and I always want to share stories because I feel like that makes you realize we're never alone. What's personal is universal. Trevor and I have been through countless money lessons. We've been through countless relationship lessons. We've been through countless parenting lessons. We're going to be talking about all this on the show. And what we've come to realize is that the only commitment you need to make to really continue and to continue aspiring to and to grow and to create that life that you really want is to make the commitment to be unstoppable. And, you can go through the hardest things. You can go through the most horrific things and you can come out on top. You can absolutely turn your life around. I mean, anything can happen. And it's about that spiritual strength training. It's about recognizing when we've had something that is uncomprehensibly difficult, we've got to find a way to get back on top. We've got to find a way to believe in ourselves again, especially when things go really, really bad. You've got to get back on track with your identity. This is it. This is the crux of it. If you can get back on track with your identity, that is really the key to continuing and to creating that future that you really want for yourself. And another thing I want to share with listeners today is that, this is really near and dear to my heart. I mean, I had family members, close family members, who gave up on themselves, and they had dreams in their hearts. And I get emotional when I think about that, because it's like, we come into this life and we're never told from the very beginning that, we're going to fail and we're going to have these terrible things happen to us. And it happens sometimes accidentally. It happens when we least expect it. And I think the saddest thing is when people give up on their dreams. I really do. And I saw this with close family members, and it was so sad to see what happened years later. That person who gave up on themselves, that was it. It's like life then took a downward spiral. They never were able to get out of that. And, I say this because I have compassion for myself, because I witnessed those things growing up. And I realized that I didn't really have the role models at the time to realize even how I could overcome my biggest failures. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that on this show. But I think that we've got to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt that whatever happens to us, we can get back up again. We can adopt a new identity. We can get back on top. And it's so, so important. You owe it to yourself to really think about what you can do to create an identity that allows you to feel successful again, that allows you to feel like you're capable, that allows you to believe in yourself again when all the cards, when the decks were stacked against you, when you stop believing in yourself. Like, there's always an opportunity to turn it around. So I'll share more about this, but I want you to I'm kind of planting a seed here that this is such an important piece to creating this life. If you want a life of freedom, the first thing you've got to do is claim it for yourself.
That's it. And sometimes we got to go back to where we were to get examples of other times where our back was up against the wall. And I call this, in the coaching world, the back to the future opportunity, right? And if you think about that movie, Back to the Future, Marty McFly going in the DeLorean, sometimes we also have an opportunity to go back in our lives and say, what? Maybe there was a time where perhaps you didn't think you were going to get your driver's license, right? You thought you were going to fail, yet you got your driver's license. Or maybe you go back to a time where you thought you weren't going to get into college and you got into college. Or maybe there was a time where you wanted to go backpacking around Central, America or South America, and you thought, how am I going to pay for this? And you figured it out. Or maybe there was a time where you thought, nobody's ever going to want to marry me, and you met your soulmate. So if you really think about it, there's been other times in our lives where if we go back to where we were and now bring that into the future, what if now was one of those times where you're going to conquer it? What if this is one of those times where you're going to get clear on what you want, why you want it, so that that can become something in your predictable future? And I'm telling you, there's one word, Leesa, and you know what it is, and I know what it is that helps you get there, and that is focus, right? Focus is the number one thing that you've really got to command, because as you know, we're either focused on what we don't want or we're focused on what we do want. And I'm here to tell you that most people that I've ever coached, and if we walk down any street in America or anywhere on the planet for that matter today, you'll hear people talking about what they don't want, because you hear the big three. I don't want to be broke, I don't want to be fat, and I don't want to be lonely, right? And we call those the big three because it's money, it's health, and it's relationships. Instead of saying, well, I want to be abundant, I want to be in great shape, and I want to have an amazing life partner like Leesa to share the rest of my life with. And all that is focus, because again, if you're focused on what you don't want, your brain is going to go look for what it is you don't want versus what you do want. And I know that's been huge in our lives and in the lives that, when we do a coaching by the beach retreat, or we do a mastermind, or we take people through these exercises, it's mind blowing. So any comments on that one?
I have so many comments on this. I mean, I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear what our listeners have to say about this conversation. And I'm going to share something really profound that I've realized this last year. And it's been life-changing for me. And I know it's going to be for you as well if you really take this, what I'm about to share. So what I realized is that, now here's the thing, I'm coming from a place of being a creative visionary, okay? Now what's interesting about being a creative visionary is most of us as creative visionaries, we kind of have a bit of ADHD going on, and the focus thing is always something that we are challenging ourselves to harness, right? And here's what I've realized. The world is designed to distract you.
Yes.
The world is designed to distract you from your power. The world is designed to keep you distracted from what you're truly capable of. And this is something I feel so passionate about. And this goes back to the conversation I've had in previous episodes. When I had to undo those beliefs about not being creative, not being smart, not being good enough. I mean, those were lies that I told myself. But I also realized that those were lies that are very, very well designed. The societal conditioning is actually real. The societal conditioning is there, and we have to recognize where we have been conditioned into that limitation. And the world is, like I said, it's going to distract you, whether it's a political conversation, whether it's we get into these conversations that we're missing the mark. We're missing the mark on creation. We're missing the mark on what we're capable of creating. I always say that so many people are so dissatisfied with the world. And absolutely, we can take a look at the world right now and go, oh my gosh, this place is crazy, right? But the reality is that the only way that we get out of the craziness is to create something new. And the only way that we create something new is to harness that power that we have inside of ourselves to create something. And I will take my hat off to every entrepreneur that's ever created something out of nothing. I mean, the people that I truly admire in the world are the people that have done that have taken a wild idea for something that never existed, and they were able to bring that to life. We all have that capacity. And I've been telling people recently, I mean, I have a children's education company, and I say, look, the number one thing that I want my child to learn is how to be a creator. How to not just follow the herd and be a consumer, just step into your power to create. And when you realize that you've got this power within you, when you've got this power to create your life, to create a business, to create something that's going to change the world, to create something that's going to impact society, when you realize you've got that power within you, and by the way, we all have that power. We all have that power inside of us. If you harness that energy, you can do things that you can't even possibly imagine right now. And so, the lesson here is focus. It's back to what we were talking about. It's focus. It's giving yourself enough time and attention, giving your life time and attention, giving your dreams time and attention, right? This is what I always say to people, you're not going to get the life that you really want if you don't spend enough time thinking about it and creating it, okay? So even as an example on a Sunday, this is an idea for all of our listeners. You can spend some time on Sunday. I mean, some people will zone out on the weekends. They'll choose to watch Netflix or, just have that time to relax. But what if you gave yourself that time to dream? What if on a Sunday afternoon you gave yourself 2 to 3 hours to do some research online? What are those things that are on your bucket list right now? And we'll be talking a lot about achieving your bucket list. What are those bucket list ideas and dreams that you have, places you want to visit, things that you want to create? Start writing that down. Spend some time on a Sunday researching, watch a biography. I was just showing my son the biography of Olivia Newton-John as an example. And he was so inspired by her. He was like, wow, when you look back at her life, I mean, she had a singing career that spanned 50 years, 5 decades. And I was so inspired by her. I mean, I think, gosh, this woman did so much in her lifetime. But guess what? She failed. She also failed. She had spectacular failures. She had setbacks. She had heartbreaks, absolute heartbreaks. And that is the journey that we're all on. And as long as we stay focused and stay true to our vision, again, it comes back to what we're talking about. It's just, this is what we can create for ourselves.
That's so good.
I'm going to stop now and I'll leave it over to you, sweetheart.
Oh, you could talk about this for days. But again, I think the average person really needs to stop and really think about, what you're doing with those 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Because again, if you focused on what's not working, you're going to get more of that. If you start to focus on what's one thing that I'm grateful for, or what's a second thing, you start building what we call your gratitude stack. And I really do believe that gratitude is the ultimate place to start thinking about what you want to call in. So with all of that, we are now ready for our 3 to Thrive. And our listeners have really chimed in that they love this because we're about to ask you 3 thought-provoking questions from today's episode that can get you to go further faster. And so, Leesa, I'll throw it over to you for the first 2.
Question 1 is, what do you want to focus on right now? Like, what's the number one focus you want to have in your life, right? So whether that's your career, it's your finances, it's your relationship, what's the number one focus? So start to think about that. Like, what is it that you really want to dial in your energy to, your focus? So that's number 1.
Love that. Number 2.
Number 2 would be, when it comes to your vision, go back to, what we asked you in previous episodes, like, what is the vision that you have for your life? Now, it might not be your life right now. You might not have some specifics around what you want to do, but maybe what is your vision for the world? Like, what is it that you want to create? What kind of impact would you like to make? How do you want to leave this world a better place? Start to riff on that a little bit in your journal. Like, what is the impact? What is the vision that you have? This might even have been something from childhood, a childhood dream that you forgot about. Why don't you resurrect that dream and start thinking about what it is that you can do to start moving forward and giving that focus, giving that time and energy.
I love that. And the third and final question is really about again, leaning into the fact that we don't have a straight line from where we are to where we want to go. There's a gap, right? But you also got to think about how far you've come. What have you endured? How much blood, sweat, and tears have you left out on the field? Whether that was, again, with your health, with your marriage, with your business, raising kids, dealing with aging parents, navigating the pandemic. I mean, we've all got so much to be grateful for. And you've really got to ask yourself, are there any rational lies I'm telling myself that would prevent me from keep on going, right? Because rationalize or rationalizing is where we continually tell ourselves why we're not the right person. It's not the right time. I'm not the right age. I don't have the right finances behind me, or whatever that story is. And once you begin to do what we're talking about here, and you start to rewrite the narrative in your future self, in your highest self, and in your best self, I'm telling you, that's where the universe takes notice, and the right people start showing up. The right opportunities start showing up. The right, conferences or the right coaching shows up that really gets you to stand on the shoulders of giants and move to the next level. So with all of that, that's a big show on identity. Any final thoughts?
I'm inspired. I'm inspired to even journal myself on these pieces. We can always give more time and attention to our thoughts and our dreams. That's just my philosophy. And I think this whole conversation about identity and vision, don't take this lightly. I mean, these are the secrets, you guys. Like, when we think about our lives and we look back, these are the things that made all the difference. This has allowed us to create the life that we have. And we want you to live your vision board life. That is it. That is why we've created the show. And so we hope we've inspired you today. And that's really all I have for today.
Now, that's delicious. And what I would also add to that and stack on that is you can do this individually, but you can also do it with your spouse or your significant other. When you get together, sometimes 2 heads are better than 1, and you start to dream again. You start to think outside the box. And I've even had clients that will include their children. So whether their kids are small or their kids are in their teens or their kids are older, sometimes it's really powerful to sit and ask, what's your dream? What's on your heart? What do you want? Why do you want it? And then that identity of being that one that can go achieve it starts to show up. So with that said, I want to thank our listeners, and I want to thank you, Leesa, for all of the intel and insight that you deliver. And
peace, love, and palm trees.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today at Coaching by the Beach. If this episode helps you to see your path to more success, more wealth, freedom, and fulfillment, we'd love your support.
Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform.
Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
And don't let your journey stop here. Connect with us in our community of like-minded achievers on all social platforms at Coaching by the Beach.
We're excited to continue exploring this path to freedom with you.